الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
The question shouldn't be, have I heard this before, or do I know this or not? The question should be, to what extent am I practicing this? To what extent am I implementing this? And that's, inshallah ta'ala, what we're going to task ourselves with today. So, we know that Islam carries a balance in everything. We are tasked with balance throughout our lives. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the believers, in many places He frames it by saying what? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. So He doesn't just say the people who work without iman, or the people that have iman but don't work, but He combines someone who claims belief or who has believed has to put forth some effort to give evidence to the belief in their heart. And so, when it comes to our families, there are some foundational, fundamental things, and a few points. There's no guidance that I can give today as to what constitutes the perfect behavior within a particular family unit, because some of that is cultural, some of that is based on the time that you live and the place that you live. And there's not a book you're going to find within Islam that prescribes every detail. But there are principles. There are principles that we can follow. And what we want to do today is take some of those foundational principles, explore them and unpack them a little bit, and then open it up to how we are practicing those things. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the beautiful thing about him is, despite the character that Allah gave him, despite the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal clarified for us that He is our example, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. He is the example. Too often what we do is we put the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a place that is extreme to the point that he's there, so I'm not going to try to follow him. When the reality is, when we see his behavior, we need to measure ourselves up against that behavior. How am I implementing the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? To what extent? And we know that he didn't just lead by words, he led by example. Yes, by example. And so, in a famous hadith, most of you probably have heard it. It's the title of our talk today is based upon it. That was relayed to us by Aisha radhiyallahu anha. May Allah be pleased with her. And collected authentically in the Sunan of Imam at-Tirmidhi. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Khayrukum, khayrukum li ahlihi, wa ana khayrukum li ahli." He said, the best among you are the ones who are the best to their families, or the one who is best to his or her family. And he said, I am the best to my family. Now this was very powerful for a couple of reasons. Primarily, the fact that the Prophet ﷺ is basically telling us here, check my credentials. I'm not just saying be good to your family, but if you ask my wives, you're going to see problems. If you ask the children that are raised in my household, you're going to see problems. He's saying, I'm telling you, and go check. Ask about me. And you'll find that I am the best to my family. So his example is there. And this is a challenge for many of us because, and this is based on just years of my experience within different communities, I would imagine we struggle with the same thing, is that too often someone can come to the masjid, and they can be well behaved and respectful and honorable and charitable and kind. But when the door closes when they go home, those things are out the window and they become a tyrant. They become an oppressor. They become someone that you wouldn't recognize based on their behavior here. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not say, reserve your best behavior for the musalla. He said, reserve your best behavior for your family. Which means that if I'm good here, if you see me good here, then I should be amazing at home.
Yeah.
If I'm patient here, I should be so patient at home. If I'm charitable here, I should be so charitable at home. But somewhere along the line, a disconnect came about where we put on this face sometimes. May Allah protect us.
Amen.
May Allah forgive us.
Amen.
But sometimes, you know, we give patience to the community. When we go home, we're out of patience. We don't have any more patience. I go to work and I smile at the secretary and I smile at my boss and I smile at my colleagues and I'm patient. But when I go home, I'm done with patience. Where's the patience? I'm done with patience. Quiet these kids down. I don't want to hear any more noise. I've heard noise all day. And the same thing, whoever's at home, when the husband or wife comes, let me tell you about my problems. Right? Let me unload. And then so we find that these things contravene the example of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, which is a very practical example for us. خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِهِ وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِي. So the first barrier that we can overcome to build our strong families is to close the character gap. Because if you can behave here, that shows that you know how to behave. Now there are unique challenges because anyone who's married, how many people are married? Show of hands. How many people are married? Oh, so about half, well, less than half. So, if you're married, then you know that if you're the husband, that your wife can push your buttons like no one else. And if you're a wife, your husband can push your buttons like no one else. It's just a fact. That's married life. So, it is not, we're not saying it's not challenging. It is challenging. But that's why they're the best of you. That's why they're the best of you. Those people who can maintain the highest standards of character when they're at home, they are the ones who are the best. The Prophet ﷺ, he also said authentically, it was mentioned by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, that خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِلنِّسَاءِ. This is for the brothers. Just to clarify it even more. The family, the scholars mentioned, can include, your father, your mother, your kids, the aqrabin, the people close to you. All that is encompassed in the first hadith, but the Prophet ﷺ also specified in another hadith, the best of you are the best to the women. They're the ones who are best to women. And I tell you, brothers, in this age, in the age of social media, in the age of the internet, all of these things that we deal with. Many of us, I can just tell, we grew up maybe when these things were just coming into shape. But the environment our kids are coming up in is very different. And on personal experience, this is not something I read somewhere, but from personal experience, I'm seeing that too often our young people don't respect women because they become so objectified in this culture. Because they're objectified not only through advertising, not only through popular culture and shows and things like this, but also through the exposure to pornography, unfortunately, is a huge problem. In our community also, by the way, we act like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
90% of young men, before they turn 18, have been exposed to graphic or inappropriate imagery. 90%. And most of them were exposed for the first time between the ages of 8 and 11. Now that sounds shocking, right?
Yeah.
But we hear that, and I guarantee what most of us will think when I say that statistic is, not my kids. Most of us, I'm sure, not my kids. Not mine. Those non-Muslims out there, I'm sure they're dealing with that, but alhamdulillah, my kid goes to Quran school, so it can't happen to me. My kid goes to the Sunday school, so it can't happen to me. It's happening. It is happening. And one of the things that we struggle with is that for some of our cultures and some of our children, they feel like they can't have real conversations with us. I can't tell you how many of our kids have 2 social media accounts. Right? They have the one that you can see, and they have the other one for what really goes down. And these are things I'm seeing. And if you ask the young people in here, inshallah, no one in here is doing it, right? But you know someone who's doing it, right? You know someone who does that, I'm sure. It's very common. So, respect for women, respect for humanity. These things have to be brought up within us. Our young people particularly, because we need to raise not males, we need to raise men. And men need to be respectful. And if you're constantly consuming imagery of women and objectifying them, you don't respect them. You don't. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he gave a very beautiful advice in this regard. Famous hadith, many of us I'm sure have heard it, about the young man who walked into the majlis, the gathering of the Prophet ﷺ and his Sahaba, his companions. And forgive me because it's kind of graphic, but I have to translate it accurately. He said, Ya Rasulullah, i'dhan li bizina. He said, O Messenger of Allah, permit me to fornicate. Permit me to have a relationship with a woman outside of marriage, a sexual relationship.
Why?
In the masjid, that's what he said. What did the Sahaba do? Quiet, quiet, stop. What are you saying? Cut it out. Can you imagine if someone walked in and asked that question? How would we react, right? This is what he did. Now the Messenger of Allah, ﷺ, he could have taken many different approaches. He could have quoted to him the ayat. He could have quoted the punishments for the people who do these things in the hereafter. He could have done all of these things. But think of the context. The young man, by asking permission, means we understand that he knows what? He knows it's right or he knows it's wrong? What does he know?
He knows it's right.
He knows it's wrong, right? He wouldn't ask permission if he thought it was okay. So he's asking permission, he wants an exception. He's saying, oh Messenger of Allah, I can't take it anymore. I'm not married, I can't get married, I gotta do something, right? That's his very real conversation. And so this is what he came with. And the Prophet said, what? Come close. He didn't kick him out. He brought him near. He had him sit next to himself, sallallahu and what did he say? He said, Atuhibbuhu li ummik? Would you like that for your mom? Would you like someone to deal with your mother in that way? And he said, I swear by Allah, la wallah, may I be sacrificed for you, O Rasulullah, I will not like that for my mom. And the Prophet ﷺ replied, and the people don't like that for their mothers either. Would you like it for your daughter? No, I swear by Allah, I wouldn't like that for my daughter. May I be sacrificed for you? The people don't like that for their daughters either. Would you like that for your sister? The Prophet ﷺ goes on. He could have made the point with one relative, but he goes through the list. Do you want that for your sister? No, I swear by Allah, I don't want that for my sister. And people don't like that for their sisters either. In one narration, he even went deeper. Do you want that for your maternal aunt? Your paternal aunt? The aunt on your mom's side, the aunt on your dad's side? Every time he says, Wallahi, no. I don't want that for them. And the Prophet ﷺ said, and people don't like that for those relatives either. And then the Prophet ﷺ did something very beautiful. He took his blessed hand he placed it on the chest of this young man, and he made dua for him. He said, Allahumma ghfir dhanba, wa tahhir qalba, wa hassun farja. He said, oh Allah, forgive his sin, and purify his heart, and guard his chastity. And two narrations. One narration mentioned that after that day, لا يلتفت إلى شيء. That young man didn't turn to anything sinful after that. And in another narration, it said that zina was the most disgusting thing to him after that. And finally, in one narration, the Prophet ﷺ, he closed after making his dua by saying, after all of these examples, he said, so you should dislike what Allah dislikes. You should hate what Allah hates, and love for your brother what you love for yourself. Love for your brother what you love for yourself. When you objectify that woman, do you picture what if someone was doing that to someone in my family? Would I appreciate that? When you disrespect that woman, do you appreciate the fact that someone could come one day and disrespect your mother or your daughter or your sister and you wouldn't stand for it? But as we famously know, لا يؤمن أحدكم, none of you truly believe until he loves for his brother and what he loves for himself, what she loves for her sister, what she loves for herself. So having this character of respect for all people, particularly having respect for women, as the Prophet ﷺ, he identified. Finally, he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, inna min akmal al-mu'minin, certainly from the most complete of the believers, imanan, in terms of their faith, ahsanahum khuluqan wa altafuhum li ahli, the one who has the best character and the one who is kindest to their families. You see, this wasn't a one-time khutbah the Prophet ﷺ gave. He was constantly reinforcing the importance of kind treatment to our families and to have upstanding and outstanding character. So this is a gap that almost without question we find that when we find struggles or people coming to the Imam complaining or these things, we find that these are generally people who sometimes we've studied even, sometimes we know the Islam, but knowledge is one thing and implementation is something else. To know is one thing, but to practice is something else. And any time we study Islam, we learn Islam, it should be with the intention that I'm going to practice. I'm going to put it into effect in my life. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us all that beautiful intention to practice and put into effect that which we know.
Amen.
Understanding the barriers, right? So this is one, we're going to go a little bit deeper into this one. Something very beautiful that was said before I came up here was the issue of salam, the greeting of salam. So when we enter our homes, what do we say? How do you greet your family? What do you say? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What does your family say in response? Hopefully. Yes. So we give this greeting, but too often we say the greeting, but we don't intend the greeting, because that greeting is actually a promise that you make. It's a prayer and it's a promise. It's a prayer that I ask Allah to give you salam. I ask Allah to give you security and safety and comfort and peace. You're making a prayer for your family and they're returning it to you, but also the intention behind it is that you will have salam from me. I am coming with peace and safety and security and tranquility. And the response from your family is, and as you come home, you can also expect from us peace and safety and tranquility, all of these things. So, Allahu Akbar, even just the word salam, just the greeting of salam by itself, is something that if you really mean it, will solve a lot of problems in your house. You don't walk into your house, say Assalamu alaikum, and start screaming at your spouse, hopefully. Because you just said salam. You don't say assalamu alaikum or wa alaikum assalam and then you follow it with something other than salam. So our goal is to really live that beautiful greeting that we say and that is famous. You can ask non-Muslims, what do you know about Islam? Many of them will say, well, I know you guys say assalamu alaikum, right? Many people know this, it's famous. Yesterday, I had the opportunity for a few minutes to meet, has anyone heard of Mike Tyson before, the boxer? Ever heard of Mike Tyson? Heard of Mike Tyson? So Mike Tyson, I met him for a few minutes yesterday, and you know he became Muslim, right? Now, alhamdulillah, you know, he's out there, you know social media, you kind of know what's going on. You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, reward him for the good he's done, correct his mistakes, and us. But when this was like at a meet and greet, he was at a hotel and one of my relatives works there, so I was able to go and see him. And so all these people were coming up to him just saying hi, whatever, but I went to him and said, Assalamu alaikum. His face lit up. Wa alaikum salam. He's like so happy, like just to hear that greeting, just like, I feel like it made his day. And enthusiastically saying salam to me, saying salam to my son. And I said, look at this, like I've never met this person in my life. And he's, you know, however famous he is. But just that one word and the brotherhood is established. And how beautiful is that? Many of you, you know, came from all the way across the world, right? Under what other circumstances would we cross paths? But we say Assalamu alaikum, and you become my brothers and you become my sisters just like my brothers and sisters from my own mother and father. It's a very powerful statement. And we shouldn't downplay or disregard its importance. The next barrier that we want to talk about, and we'll just speak for a few more minutes inshallah, is the barrier of ignorance. Ignorance, and jahl. We know that in Islam, in fact, the period before Islam, before the advent of the Prophet ﷺ, what was that period called?
Jahiliyyah.
Jahiliyyah, which means what?
Ignorance.
The time of ignorance, right? The time of ignorance. So the implication is that after ignorance comes what?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. Comes knowledge. The first ayah to be revealed, according to the majority of the ulama, is what?
Iqra.
Iqra. Which means what?
Read.
Which means to read, to recite. One of the principles of Quranic exegesis or tafsir is that an ayah doesn't have to have one meaning, right? You can have multiple benefits that come from the same ayah. So from the benefits of Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, one of the benefits of it is, yes, that the Prophet ﷺ was told to recite and to begin his recitation of the Quran with the basmala, to start the Quran with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and to recite with the intention and with the name of Allah. But also more broadly, the scholars extrapolated from this ayah that Allah Azza wa Jalla started with knowledge. Iqra, read, recite, study, educate yourself. Because Allah created, and who did He create? خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ اقْرَأْ وَرَبُّكَ الْأَكْرَمُ الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ. The first ayat have to do with obtaining knowledge and the beauty of knowledge and the fact that knowledge is something divine in its origin. And we are unique as a creation in our ability to increase our knowledge. So how does that apply to our families and overcoming barriers and building strong families? Brothers and sisters, an important point I want to share with you is this. I recommend that we do not outsource our children's Islamic education entirely. I recommend we do not outsource our children's Islamic education entirely. When I say that, what does that mean to you? Help me out. When I say that, don't outsource it, what do I mean?
We should take care of teaching them, knowing what the goes, knowing the being part of the teaching process.
Yes.
Now that we know that there is an alpha to teach them somewhere,
Yes.
we also try to seek knowledge in order to teach them at home.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I was in the school, I picked my child up, asked them what they learned. Alhamdulillah, they got something and they're good for the week. And next week I dropped them off again and I picked them up and alhamdulillah, they got some more. And that's the process, right? Based on my personal experience, my recommendation to my brothers and sisters is that it should not be exclusively outsourced. Now, yes, we take advantage of schools and programs and events and all of these things. I recommend that we start at home and that we be that example that we want for our kids. If the Sunday school says Muslims shouldn't use bad language, and our children come home and they see us using bad language, which lesson is more powerful? The example. That's what our kids are going to remember. That's what they're going to remember. If the weekend school says love the Quran, and the kids come home and all we're doing is watching shows and browsing the internet, and they never see a mushaf in our hands, what lesson's more powerful? Our lesson is more powerful. Because we mentioned the Prophet ﷺ was an example. There's a huge wisdom in the fact that Rasulullah ﷺ did not just come, give the Quran to the Sahaba, say, have at it, I'm done. Just delivering. Here's the message, do with it what you will. There's a reason that Aisha radiallahu anha said that كَانَ خُلْقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. His character is the Quran. Likewise, and again, we're not going to be perfect, but if we're blatantly violating the codes and ethic and morals of Islam in our behavior, or it's apparent that we don't take it seriously at home, that is going to be the most powerful lesson for our children. So I recommend, and it's going to be a challenge. It'll be a challenge for many of us. I recommend that you find 10 minutes in your day. 10 minutes. How many minutes? 10 minutes. This is a recommendation. You can do more, you can do less. But we know that the Prophet said, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُ. That those actions that Allah loves the most are the ones that are done most consistently, even if it's something small, he said. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So my concern is if I tell you, have an hour-long halqa with your children, you'll do it day 1. You might do it day 2. But you're going to burn yourself out. And next week, there's nothing. Pick something sustainable. That 10 minutes, shaitan will make every effort to make you busy. Now, when the new season drops on Netflix, you're not busy. We can binge watch the show. We find the time. It's amazing. Shaitan frees up our schedule. Look, you got plenty of time. But if we say 10 minutes with my family, oh, well, I got homework. Oh, well, I'm tired. Oh, well, I have to do this. Well, so-and-so's calling me. That 10 minutes will feel like 10 hours. It's a battle. But if you can find 10 minutes and get a simple text, the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, if you like, Riyadh al-Salihin, if you like. There's some excellent compilations of hadith even made in more modern times. 40 hadith for Islamic schools, 40 hadith on good character, just to take something simple. Even reading a couple ayats from the Quran, something that you maybe have studied. Just taking the time to have that gathering of knowledge with your kids. And just to show them the importance that, you know what, we spend time, how many hours we spend a day scrolling on this thing, right? We have time for that. We make time for that. How many hours do we spend at work? We make time, we know it's important. How many hours do we spend eating? How many hours do we spend in the bathroom? Right? There's time for everything. But 10 minutes, at first it will seem heavy, but if you can gather your family. If you don't have kids, then I absolutely recommend this to newlyweds. get a book, spend 10 minutes, read it together, take some notes. Ask your wife, hey, last night, what did we talk about? Remember? Ask your husband, hey, we talked about this. To put that time into Islamic knowledge will bring barakah to your house. It will bring blessings to your house. It will bring the angels, inshallah ta'ala, to your house. It will bring rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to your house. There's too many benefits, we can't go into them all now, but to have that environment to say, Ya Allah, I am dedicating voluntarily just a few minutes of my day to you. Not just my salah, but to growing as a family. This is a family that inshallah ta'ala will be blessed. But if we find that I never talk to my wife about deen, I never talk to my kids about deen, or very sparingly, but I have time for everything else. From personal experience, I'm telling you, particularly parents with young ones, this time goes very fast. Those of you older kids know, right? This time, mashallah, these young boys and girls here, may Allah supposed to protect them and bless them. But this time goes so quickly, and before you know it, wait, you're 14? You're 15? Whoa, you graduated? And you intended, I was going to teach you this, or I was going to talk to you about that. But then there comes that age where they don't listen like they used to, right? There comes that age where there's not really as much of you don't have as much of a say. What Baba and Mama say, it's not as big of a deal anymore. But even if they're older, inshallah ta'ala, most of our kids, alhamdulillah, if you say, hey, I want to spend 10 minutes with you, parenting experts recommend that you spend at least 20 minutes a day with your kids, just having a conversation. Right? Some of us don't make time for that, unfortunately. We don't talk to our kids. We let them wall themselves off. That time, that investment that you make is such that even though they will make mistakes, even though they're going to mess up from time to time, they're going to have influences, but that investment is building a foundation. And that's a foundation that inshallah ta'ala, they will return to. They will value. And mashallah, I'm sure many of you can speak of memories you have of your parents and the time they spent with you, and the time that they educated you, and the time that they invested in you. So even though we're in a very busy culture, in a very busy society, in a very busy environment, don't be too busy to make that investment. Because that's the investment that pays off. If someone told you 10 minutes a day and you're going to be a millionaire, you're going to spend 10 minutes a day, I promise you.
More than that.
You won't miss it. If someone said, just put 10 minutes a day and you're going to get this payoff, you'll say, I don't care what's going on, I'll drop everything, I'll leave, I'm going to spend 10 minutes, right? All of us will do so. But the Prophet tells us one of the things after we die that will be there for us is waladun salih yad'u lahu. Have that righteous son, that righteous daughter to make dua for you. That's an investment. You want to invest in that. Invest in a child who will remember you positively, who will make dua for you, so that when you're gone, that's what's going to count. The bank account won't matter. But your children taking time to say, oh Allah, forgive my dad, forgive my mom. These are the things that you really value. Brothers and sisters, this is a topic that could go on, mashallah, for a long time. But it's about the time for salah, so we don't want to delay the salah. I hope that some of the things that we said resonated. And the key is have the intention. All the actions are by intentions. Have the intention from today. If I feel like my family's doing pretty well, I should be grateful to Allah, but also know I can do better. And if I have gaps or shortcomings, I should know not to lose hope in Allah. He's the one who guides. If my kids are messing up, He can guide them. If my wife's messing up, He can guide her. If I'm messing up, He can guide me very easily. And He's very free with His guidance. We just have to do what? We just have to ask subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove the barriers that hold us back from having strong families, and He give each and every one of us strength in our families, because that's where your strength will go for your entire deen. And I ask that He make us the best خيركم خيركم لأهله. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make each and every one the best and make us the best to our families. Jazakallahu khairan ala husni istimaikum. Thank you so much for your kind attention and listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Takbir.
Now, please, in one swoop, I want us all to say Jazakallahu khairan to our Sheikh. Please let us say that once again. Please let us say it so loudly. Jazakallahu khairan. And Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Just like I always say, that Allah has given us Al-Quran as the manual, except for that which is yet to happen on earth, that we may read the Quran as say probably it's not correlating, or it's not good enough to explain any situation we find ourselves. Even for the future, Allah has taken care of the future through the Quran. For everything you will be looking for is what is in the Quran. We will only always bring out issues as they happen, as we journey through life, and justify it through what? Quranic verses. So, taking care of our kids, having a peaceful family, has been even designed by what? By Allah, and given to us through Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? By doing what? By codifying everything into the Quran. So, as a Muslim, we have no problem. We have no trouble except the one we bring on ourselves. Because Allah has made it easy for us only if we can follow the path. Only if we can follow the guidelines.